Okay, I'm here to talk to you about extra socks, also known as high impact practices online. Um, I'll get to the extra socks analogy in a minute, but first let me start with the violence metaphor because I think that when people think about high impact practices, they think this must be something that's really vigorous, something that has this really sudden effect. And in fact, I don't know. I don't actually know where the term came from, but I can tell you these are the high impact practices if you Google them. So if we look through them real quickly, we can kind of get a head start on what they are and maybe move a little bit away from the violence metaphor. And I handed you the list of high impact practices. You have them with lengthy descriptions, but these should be things that sound familiar. Either you use them in your classes, you've been asked to use them in your programs, or at least you know people that use them. So first year seminars and first year experiences, common intellectual experiences, learning communities, writing intensive courses, collaborative assignments and projects, undergraduate research, diversity and global learning, service learning, community-based learning, internships, capstone courses, and projects. That sounds like a good collection of things that sound like they probably work pretty well. And when you think about, hey, which of these could we do online? The answer is we could probably do any of these online, but I find myself usually talking about things like learning communities, increasing the amount of writing in courses, and collaborative assignments, SAND projects. But actually, this isn't what I want to talk about today because I think that we high center a little bit on the high impact practices, and I'll explain to you why by first returning to the violence metaphor. Um, the man on the left is named Czech Congo. He is a beastly mixed martial arts fighter, and a few years ago he went up to fight against this fella, Roy Wilson. That really is a picture of what he looks like. Anyone hazard to guess what the outcome of this fight was? I thought I'd show YouTube, but I wasn't really sure I wanted to show that much violence. Yeah, you'd think that Congo would, end this guy's life, if not his career. 30 seconds into the fight, Roy knocked Congo out flat using a punch known as the haymaker. And if you want to see this, it's kind of amazing watching a nearly 400-pound man put all of his weight into the temple of another man. Guess what? You go to sleep. Okay. It turns out I think that Roy Wilson understands high impact practices. It's not a set of things, it's those specific tricks that work so well when applied correctly. So I would like to talk about high impact practices as extra socks. Not all the things in the world that you could do, but that really smart thing, like just making sure you have an extra pair of socks. And if you don't believe me, watch Forrest Gump. So let's talk about extra socks for the next 40 minutes. To get to what the actual thing that makes high impact practices work, let's just look at what high impact practices are. And they are practices that educational research, very important, suggests increased rates of student retention and student engagement. So I take those two things, student retention and student engagement. I don't think there's anybody in here that thinks those are bad things. Those are great. And if there's actually research-based interventions that get us there, we ought to be interested in those things. And so we're going to talk about how do you increase retention, how do you increase engagement? What are those specific magical things that we can pull out of the research that show us that? We've got to talk about online too, because I'm here to talk about online high impact practices. That's what I know is online. And online learning provides students access to learning across time and space. The technology aids in the collection, analysis, and distribution of data in support of student learning. That's what online is. It allows us to do what we do over time and space, and it does provide us a little bit more instrumentation than we have in the classroom. For example, I know what my students click on. I don't necessarily know what they do in the classroom. I mean, I know they're there, but I don't really know what they're doing. I know what students are doing in my online classroom. Sometimes I know how little they're doing. That's what online is. So I can fill out my matrix here. So now I've got student retention and student engagement, the stuff of high impact practices. And then I have to ask the question, what does online have to do with it? Well, it must do this retention and engagement stuff across time and space, and somehow collection, analysis, and distribution of data. So I hope you appreciate my feigned rigor here because I'm actually showing you that we can think about this sort of systematically. And we don't just have to say, how do we take high impact practices writ large like first year seminar and just do them online? We're going to atomize a little bit and try to look into this and try to think about where online can help us. And since this is really boring, I thought I'd give you some kind of visual cues to kind of help think through this. So I have some icons that we're going to use. So I was trying to think like time and space, and like a retention, like kind of like being trapped in time and space. And so, of course, it made me think of The Land of the Lost. That great Sid and Marty Krofft show of my era, 1970s. It was a story about a family that got trapped in a time out of time and tried to escape. So our icon for thinking about retention across time and space will be Land of the Lost. Oh, and by the way, Land of the Lost was the era of the dinosaurs. I could not find a Sleestack icon, incidentally. So that's our icon for across time and space. But what about engagement across time and space? Well, of course, nothing could be more engaging across time and space than Doctor Who. So that's my icon for that. So I have my television icon metaphors to talk about time and space across retention and engagement. And then what about this data stuff, this analysis, collection, and distribution of data? I was trying to think of another set of metaphors, make some other icons up, and I was trying to think about like somebody who's kind of like scientific, really retains people. And our Batman, of course, he's a detective. He's always using data, but he definitely catches people. So Batman now is our icon for retention. And who's the most engaging superhero of all? Well, Superman. So that's how I got there. So those are your icons, and we're going to use these icons. And I know you think that I'm belaboring this horrible metaphor, and in fact I am, but it will help you as we go through the rest of the presentation. So what I want to do now is the second page that you have there are actually these sort of features of high impact practices. They call them key elements and examples. And so when you look at something like first year seminar and you ask why does it work, these are the research things that would say this is the stuff that makes that function. And there's two good reasons to look at these key factors. Is because for one thing, maybe in your discipline, especially for those of you from professional schools, a lot of the curriculum's kind of set for you. It's not like you can just decide, hey, let's do a capstone. But nevertheless, these elements may apply to your individual courses. So think about that. The other reason why I want to look at these elements is because these elements have decomposed at a level that makes it a little bit easier for us to talk about how we might use the time and space and data elements of online to really bring those to life in our online courses. So you with me? Here's my key at the bottom: Land of the Lost, Doctor Who, Batman, and Superman. So let's go through the first one, letting me show you how I want to do this, and we will go through all of these time permitting. So the first element is performance expectations set at appropriately high levels. Again, research-based best practice sounds awesome. Well, what can we do with online here? There's probably a lot of things we could do. I picked two that I just happen to know from my own experience have worked very well for a lot of faculty. One is the regular posting of grades. And the regular posting of grades helps set performance expectations at appropriately high levels because it's very difficult for students to achieve when they don't know where they are at. If they only have these like pulse, like runners have watches that can check their rate at any minute. We can't give students grades in midterm and final, expect them to reach high standards because they're in the fog most of the time. So I would say that's kind of a Batman category, right? We're talking about how online provides data and can really create engagement, really create retention, because now I have people on a pattern. I have them. I'm keeping track of them. I'm holding them to high standards, but they can see where they're at. So that's kind of how online's ability to use data can really help. And by regular posting of grades, I mean this could be every week at minimum, but it could even be more frequent. It really depends on what you're doing. You could have quizzes that happen twice a week, plus some other work. That regular ongoing feedback and setting those standards, that Batman strategy of using data to retain people is really important. Vice versa, on the instructor's side, this is a way for you to keep track of performance and to hold students to those standards. Or how about this one? For those who've been around for a while, you've probably heard me talk about death to the Dropbox. It's one of my favorite things to talk about because rarely do I get to say, if you'd like to read more about the article Patrick Lowenthal and I wrote about death to the Dropbox, Google death to the Dropbox. It's one of those keywords you can actually look for. The bottom line of death to the Dropbox is have students turn in work publicly, largely in discussions. Give the feedback publicly, largely in discussions. You may reserve the grades privately, but the goal of this is to make sure that students are able to see what other students are doing, see what other students, how they're performing, see the feedback that other students are being given. A very much studio kind of model for those of you that come from architecture or art, the performing arts areas. The idea is to visualize performance, because when you visualize performance, then performance expectations can remain high. Or as I like to say, if you grade every student individually, every student continues to believe that they are the smartest person in the class. As soon as they have to see what the girl sitting next to them got, then they go, oh, maybe I'm not so smart. Maybe I didn't study so hard. Maybe I need to work harder. So depth of the Dropbox is an idea for online, which is to say, visualize performance across the classroom. Let the class norm to higher standards rather than to norm to internal standards. And this, I would say, is an engagement across time and space strategy. So this would be a Doctor Who strategy, right? So there's just some kind of ways just to kind of think about this. And again, I can't solve all problems for all disciplines at all levels, but I can start to get you to kind of think about this. And we're going to go through these to kind of practice. So those are just a couple of ideas of how performance expectations can be set at appropriately high levels across any online class. Congratulations, you're now using high-impact practices. Let's do another one real quick. Significant investment of time and effort by students over an extended period of time. I like this one because this is actually more eloquently framed as time on task. There are limits to time on task. No matter how long I spend practicing football, I will never play professional football. It's just not going to happen. But nevertheless, if I practice a lot, I'd probably get better, right? So we know this, and yet sometimes, particularly in online classes, we do an excellent job of skating through material very rapidly. And online offers us an amazing opportunity to hold students accountable to significant investments of time and effort. How do we do this? The methods are numerous, but let me give you one. How about staged assignments? What is a staged assignment? Why is it a land of the lost example? I'll explain. A classic kind of maneuver in an online class, and I've performed this maneuver quite elegantly, I must admit. You have a final paper due on the last day of class. Go. And that's probably like, okay, we've all done that. I switched years ago to a model that works a lot more like the staged assignment. Many weeks before the paper is due, propose a topic, right? The old propose a topic thing. I'll have them propose a topic in a discussion so everybody sees the topics and we talk about what makes a good topic. Maybe the next week it might be provide an outline or provide sources or whatever. Again, in a discussion, and we'll talk about it. At some point in time, I'm going to actually get to the draft stage, right? The draft is actually going to be turned in before the end of class, before the end of the semester. It's going to be turned in publicly, and I am actually going to perform all the feedback function, the really real investment of time in that draft of the project that everyone can see. And then on the final day when the paper's due, they're going to turn the paper in, and I'm actually just going to grade it and give them no feedback. They're not going to read it anyway. And how does this create the significant investment of time and effort of students over an extended period of time? Well, basically, I am scaffolding and structuring their time through a series of assignments that keeps them focused on task, in feedback loops with me, with other students. I'm holding them accountable, right? It's really simple. I don't just make this imaginary illusion in my mind that, oh, they need 3 weeks to do this. I'm going to give them 3 weeks. I get 3 weeks to be here quiet, and they'll turn in these brilliant pieces of work. It doesn't happen that way. And by the way, I'm talking about a graduate, master's/PhD seminar that I do this in. So it's not like, we do that a lot in undergraduate. I think sometimes in graduate school we kind of think, well, they're better at this. They're not. You know that. So why is the land of the lost strategy? Well, to my mind, it is a time and space strategy that online really facilitates. You could do this in the classroom, absolutely, and of course. I just think that you start to think, look at all this paper I'm going to have to deal with. Online, it's really easy because it's all there. And there's lots of tools. Canvas offers tools to do this. Some of the stage assignment can be cycles of peer review, right? Because I'm not saying that I'm the people who are going to grade you. I just want you to be engaged and in dialogue over time. You could stretch some of these assignments out over an entire semester. Now, I know some of you are already doing this. I know some of you are going like, let's get on to things I haven't tried. But I want you to understand, staged assignments, particularly in online, are a way to increase significant investments of time and effort of students over an extended period of time. Okay, so we've done 2 of these, and I think that leaves us with like 6 or 7 more. And I would like to kind of open it up to some group work on this because I have plenty of ideas. I get to see plenty of courses, but I think that it would be more fun if I heard from you. There's the key. I made it easier for you so you can tell me where your strategies fit. Time and space, data analysis, retention and engagement. So here's the practice, right, or the element of the practice. Interactions with faculty and peers about substantive matters. And if you're not sure quite what that means, you can read the little definition in this. But give me some ideas or some examples from your own online courses of what you've done in online to increase interactions with yourself and with peers about substantive matters. Or you can say, I never have and have no ideas. Have you ever posted a discussion in your online class and asked a question that was more than just yes, no? It's Doctor Who strategy number 101, which is discussions. Come participate in this discussion. Spread over a week. There's entire books written on making good discussions. But when you frame a online discussion, not in terms of something they have to do this week so I can give them some points so I can make sure that I don't get in trouble, and instead say, no, I'm creating substantive interactions with my students, with each other and with me, then you're going in the right direction. To me, the key word there is substantive, because tell me what the author thinks about this is pretty valuable in a kind of a reflective mode, but it's not a very substantive discussion. Depending on your topic, your subject matter, engaging in something that doesn't have a right answer is probably better. I don't have any bullet points here, but let me give you an example of a discussion technique that drives substantive discussion. And it is the old case study. And I know lots of you use case studies. And I also know that you're like, well, case studies are amazing. How would I do a case study in an online class without some specialized software? Well, here's a way to do it. Discussion. We could take just a medical example. Medical does lots of case. Patient X walks in, says they have these symptoms. What do we do next? And so the class has the day to sort of discuss what thing they might ask or whatever, and then you read it, and then you come back at the end of the day and you go, okay, it sounds like the preponderance of you want to draw blood. So we draw blood, and the results come back. And you get, so then they discuss it. So you actually think about it without a huge amount of workload, honestly, on yourself, an investment of maybe 10 or 15 minutes a day. You encourage the class to have this discussion. You have them make some choices. You can even go so far as to have choose your own adventure. You have two choices. You can draw blood, or you can have a CAT scan. Or you can leave it much more open-ended. I mean, you're experts. You know your field. You know what the likelihood of the variety of things are. So you have this discussion going on. In a sense, if you diagram it out, you have this peer-to-peer discussion that's happening. But then you're coming in and you're having a bigger discussion that's all wrapped around a larger discussion. And over time, and I don't care what the pacing is. The pacing could be a week, a day, a month. I can imagine a discussion that goes an entire semester, a meta case that you're running, where each heartbeat in the case has something to do with what you're studying, so that they're kind of following the overall arch of this. And that's what's exciting to me, because dumb old discussion all of a sudden becomes an amazing framework for exciting case interactions in the class. High impact practice. Any other ideas about how you might use these kinds of tools?
Well, this is my first time teaching online, so I'm going to try to transfer something I do in class to the online, which is to give the students an option. It says here out of class activities. And my students have had options to go either, I don't know if you've heard of the exhibit of the cell.
Yeah.
So either the cell or we have a Homeland Security. And so have the students visit one of those places and then come back and report. For online, it's tricky because it's an online course, so I can't require it, but I might be able to recruit some volunteers to say, we want to go to these places and come back and report, and then and both places are rich with topics to do exactly what you're saying, that kind of interaction. Like the cell has a whole section on child soldiers, and child soldiers never fails to get tons of
Discussion. Yeah.
And we're seeing it. And so over time, what we're seeing in the in news is we learn more about kind of these groups that are operating this, that they're using more. We're seeing more evidence of child soldiers. So
Right.
it really would facilitate that over time in a
great idea. There's another strategy here which could include some of these, but I'm going to call this a Batman strategy. If you get lower than 80% in my class, I'm going to call you on the telephone and have a conversation. I was a guy named Jim Brown, who's a nursing school back east at Ocean Community College. He talks about this amazing transformative power of the phone call. Hi, this is Dr. Brown. Why haven't you come to class? Oh, they don't miss class ever again. It's just that it's like we're all human beings. We get lost sometimes, and this is an online strategy. You do it in the classroom. I'm just saying, thanks to the wonderful data collection powers of online, it's really easy for me to find out who's struggling. And I don't even have to put it in the syllabus. I can just make a personal commitment. I'm going to call every student that does X, Or you could have open office hours using Zoom. Or you could just say, I'm going to talk to every single, this is a seminar, 20, 25 students. You could say, I'm going to talk to 2 of you a week, Here's a sign-up schedule, sign up, let me know. Just do a little check-in call, see where you're at, Again, just that person-to-person touch. I mean, if you think about your class load as, whatever, it's 15 weeks. Let's do it, however you want to divide the math. 15 weeks times 3 hours a week is 45 hours. That's way less than you're supposed to be spending, according probably to your load. But let's just say it's that. 45 hours, divide it up however you want. Some weeks you don't do anything. Some weeks maybe you're on the phone. I don't know. I mean, you can figure this out. It turns out that if you just invest that time in these kinds of practices, you're going to get more out of the class than if you spend a lot of time doing thankless work that's not having an impact. Let's do another strategy here. Experiences with diversity, wherein students are exposed to and must contend with people and circumstances that differ from those which students are familiar. What would be a really good online strategy that you've either personally tried, seen, or could imagine that would work here? Go to the health fair, yeah? You have to go work at a health fair or just go visit one? Volunteer, that one. I think that's great. I mean, again, some of these are like, is that an online technique? No, not specifically, but if your students are online, it may actually be easier because you say over this semester you need to volunteer a shift at a clinic or a fair in your community. I mean, it may be easier because you don't have 25 or 30 people competing for that one thing that you all want them to go to. Absolutely.
Is there something like to do it strictly online? Is there something through a social media sort of platform that could provide the diversity?
That's a great idea. Anyone here heard of the World Wide Web? Guaranteed there are sites that express points of view radically different from you. I'm just going to make that guess, okay? Assign students to, write a report or to monitor a Twitter hashtag or to participate in a blog. I mean, these are good ideas. I mean, they're sort of things that you're kind of like, it seems really obvious when you think about it, right? And they're really like, they don't cause us any, I mean, I'm like, okay, fine. Instead of having them write a summary of some research article, I'll have them go write a report on a website. And again, I can't say this systematically. If you're teaching calculus, maybe, I don't know, I'm sure there probably is the Black Mathematicians Calculus Society somewhere. There may be value in that. I don't know, But I'm just saying, you can make those judgments, but we have that ability. Think about it the other way. Again, Zoom, right? We can do this in our classrooms too, but we have this amazing ability to reach out and bring people into the classroom. And I just would say, filter it through this. I mean, if you're like me, you ask your friends first. And if you're like me, your friends are more like you than not. And so the diversity, kind of coefficient's low. Maybe what you need to do is extend and talk to a colleague and try to find somebody who represents a more diverse point of view or has a different background, and invite them in. Just do these things intentionally. Because thanks to the World Wide Web, we have access to people all over the world, and most of those people are happy to contribute their expertise, particularly if it's really applied. And not to make too big of a point about it, but this is part of high impact practices. This isn't just the right thing to do to make the world a better place. This actually improves student retention and engagement. So even if you're a cynic, you should do this because your FCQs will go up and your graduation rates will go up. Let's do another one here. Okay, this is easy, right? Frequent, timely, and constructive feedback. How might we do this online? And if only someone would have to give a presentation about online feedback. So,
I do it to I have quizzes always do like my computer lab.
Mhm.
They have to be and so I take a look at the quizzes that very morning and I provide feedback that day. So I commit myself to on my schedule. That's what I'm doing. So I put this on daytime so I can slip.
so you're making sure that as soon as the activity's done, they're getting feedback.
Right.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Um, to kind of have a piggyback on that, Canvas has all kinds of great tools for automated feedback for multiple choice. Use those things. I know some of us are allergic to that. We think, oh, no, it's going to increase cheating or whatever. But I would say little tiny 5-point quizzes and a 1,000-point scale is a wash. There's hardly worth cheating on. But that's a great way to have people do reflection. Do you get this? I mean, if you get 5 out of 5, great, you're paying attention. If you don't, maybe you should think about that. And that's I'm going to suggest. I love what you're saying, that you're engaged with the students. That's wonderful. But frequent. If frequency is the problem, get the robot to help you out. I mean, if you're saying let the robot grade the quizzes so I can grade the papers and I can grade the show your work assignments. I mean, again, take that magical 45 hours, divide it up. Frequent and timely go together. I always like to say, ask my wife, have you seen my socks? I can't find my socks. No, I know where your socks are. A week later, she's like, here's your socks. I'm like, thank you. Like, I kind of needed my socks last week. And that's hilarious. And we do it constantly to our students. Remember that thing that we're not studying anymore that we were, that you don't really remember? Here's your grade. And I'm like, I get it. I mean, I get workload. I'm as bad as you guys are. Probably worse, sometimes. But that's what you have to kind of design it to be like, is my feedback timely? Or the classic example is I'm going to teach a kid how to hit a baseball. You don't throw a pitch, watch him swing at 10 pitches, and then the next day give him a report. You'd be like, okay, I know I'm doing it wrong, but I'm having trouble connecting it. You go like, raise your elbow, watch the ball, swing a little faster. And again, because we have the machine, we can kind of increase some of that timeliness through robot grading. Other thoughts, in particular around the constructive?
Well, on the constructive, one assignment I've done that's very successful over the years is news summaries, where the students take what they're learning in the country and aspects of the class and block news articles, make connections between the two. It works really well. And I'm going to use it again in this online class. And I'm wondering about, also sort of bundling together when I see a trend, or when I see sort of a conglomeration of either, a lot of times students will find a similar topic area that they're all writing about, and then being able to provide everybody, respond to students individually, but also note, hey, this is kind of trending here. I mean, several of you are noting this particular trend. And then have some, maybe even use that as a prompt for a discussion, or, this seems to be, the hot topic of the moment, so let's talk about it some more.
That's a great Superman strategy, using data, watching what's happening, and making counts to inform your decision making to try to keep students engaged. Great idea, absolutely. Since this is such an important one, a couple others. Do we have other ideas? Rubrics. Use rubrics. They're built into Canvas. I don't always use rubrics. When I don't, I regret not spending the time on rubrics. Kind of like folding laundry. It's a drag, but if you do it, it makes getting dressed in the morning a lot more efficient. If you don't, you spend all the time you would have spent folding plus trying to find socks. See, I'm taking my metaphors all the way through here. Use rubrics. They save you time. They can save you a lot of time. They can be very meaningful. They can help structure student work. I mean, Canvas is great about that. Student, here's the rubric, and I'm going to grade you against the rubric. So it saves you tons of time. It allows you to increase the frequency and timeliness of grading because it takes less time. By the way, I am not someone that will suggest to you that teaching an online course takes longer than a face-to-face course. It's harder if it's new, so is exercising, but once you get good at it, it shouldn't take more time than teaching a face-to-face class. It just shouldn't, because if it does, it's fundamentally broken, right? I mean, we can't invent more hours in the day to be an online instructor, so we've got to find ways to do it more efficiently. So rubrics are one way. Peer feedback counts. I mean, I know what you're saying, but the thing is, the other thing you can tell your students, besides my smart-ass remark, is you can tell your students this. I'm sorry, research shows that peer feedback is actually incredibly effective. And if you don't believe me, go find the counter evidence, because there isn't any. I mean, expert feedback is better than amateur feedback, but amateur feedback is effective. It's just they've sampled it, and they researched it, and they researched it, and they researched it. Feedback's feedback in a certain sense, right? Kind of like there's better and worse fitness and exercise, but some's better than none. Peer feedback is better than none. So, including peer feedback is another way to do frequency and timeliness. I don't care whether it's substantive feedback or whether it's just peer grading or hand-around stuff. Rubrics can facilitate peer grading. Grade your fellow students using this rubric. It's kind of a halfway point. I'm trying to do more of this because I am completely persuaded by the research, but and it also hits some of the other high-impact practices.
This is really off the wall, but it just occurred to me. Our daughter is in first grade, and we have her in execution learning school. And there is this incredible video called Austin's Butterfly, and it's about how first graders use peer feedback with their classmates. And he starts with this picture of a butterfly, which is pretty typical for first grade, and the finished product is done.
Just through peer feedback.
Yes, the kid achieved it at first grade. He achieved it purely through his peer feedback from his own classmates. So I don't know if you need to convince somebody, show them Austin's Butterfly. It's like 5 minutes, and first graders show you how peer feedback.
That's awesome. I need to look at that. That sounds great.
Yeah.
If you want your blood to run cold, just look at all the research they've done on peer review in Coursera, because it turns out that when they study it, it's like mass peer review in Coursera outcomes of students are identical to ones in like CU did this, having engineering graduate students doing grading. They're indiscernible. So there's something weird going on. But anyway, so peer Austin's Butterfly. I need that. That's awesome. And by the way, some of these really are some really interesting. Some of this is what I would kind of consider to be Superman strategies, because they're over time and space, right? But instead of using time and space to spread grading out, they've managed the workload. I mean, the workload in a classroom of having 25 students, each with an assignment, each with a rubric, each grading, and just the paperwork nightmare makes my head spin. That's really easy to do in Canvas, right? I mean, the fact that that's easy to do should tell you, oh, that's cool, maybe I should do it because it's just easy. So there's a certain sense that the online component here is facilitating some of that. So, all right, how much time do I have? Just exactly the right amount of time. Periodic structured opportunities to reflect and integrate learning. Any thoughts here? If you read the description here, and I want you to kind of think about this, because this one is a high-impact practice which really runs afoul of culture, which is, I'm the faculty in this course, I will teach this course, you will enter and exit under my watch. And while I understand in concept you are working through a larger curriculum, not my problem, right? It's just kind of how we do things. This high-impact practice sort of suggests, wouldn't it be awesome if some of these assignments and some of this progression carried forward And those disciplines that say use portfolios are working against that trend, so that I would inherit a student who comes with a portfolio and advances. Um, this is a great fertile field for online areas because we really can have students have artifacts and have assignments that transfer from one course to the next. Um, it's a desire to do it, right? And so I just kind of want to point out that this one to me is interesting, and I'm interested if I want to take a break or a moment to see if anybody has any ideas of how to do it inside of their course. That's different than we talked about.
A little bit about this in school.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you have to work hard with Canvas to get this to work. But we talked about having a large case that has several dimensions to it. So it's got an accounting dimension, and we have a finance dimension, and an HR dimension, and 3 classes all do the same case. The accounting class tackles this part, and the finance, and then the 3 classes are merged online. They never have to schedule their time to come.
Right.
And they read the individual parts and then see how the finance decisions impacted what HR was saying, and when accounting said this, the finance people weren't going to get the data they needed to make this decision. So they could see the interplay of the 3 basic functions of business.
Yeah, that's brilliant, and that's from the Canvas standpoint is a walk in the park. The hard part is the coordination, the case, because in Canvas, just so you know how we would do that, we can merge 3 courses, so the students all exist in 3 different course sections. You can have 3 completely unique sets of assignments. The touch points are any common assignments that you want them all to see. The touch points are wherever you want them to be. I mean, you can have assignments and announcements that are shared in the class. The accounting students are doing accounting, the HR students are doing HR, the finance students are doing, but then they come together and they say, here's where we are this week. Here's how your imaginary company's doing. HR has not hired any engineers, so finance is happy. We're not spending any money, but accounting's worried. They can't pay the bills, or they're not making any revenue. So anyway, you could do it that way. But that's I hope everybody listened to that, because if we did more of that. And gosh, I know your department chairs will freak out because it's like, now I got to coordinate all these people and all these things.
It was actually the dean that suggested it.
Well,
so
it's a great idea. I mean, in principle, it's a great idea, and that's the kind of thing. And maybe it can happen over time too. And and if there's software that we can help with, to where the students who have been in course 1 may move some of their assignments forward, and whether they do it or whether we do it or whether there's some Dropbox or some other place where this stuff lives. There are ways to do this. I mean, we still, so much of our administrative practice in learning has to do with carrying a briefcase around to this day. That we forget that. We forget that it would be trivial to move around hundreds of pages of paper for these students.
I think what it actually, Sean Don was the one that talked about it with sociology and criminal justice and how they shared an article. And she said the hardest part was finding time when all the students could get together, because these were brick and mortar classes.
Yes.
But that's not a problem anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's some great stuff. And by the way, this plugs right back in on your other page, things like learning communities. I mean, think about learning communities as being like the accounting club, which seems strange anyone would be a part of such a thing. But they don't have to be clubs. They can be academically focused things that are acting as if a club, but those students are moving through as a cohort trying to solve a bigger problem that they get internally, like, this is what I'm going to be doing when I get done, and now I'm actually building real world experience. All right, we got 5 minutes and 2 more to do, but these are great ideas. Opportunities to discover the relevance of learning through real world applications.
Simulation.
Yeah, simulations, of course, that's a good one.
Case studies help with that. It puts it into a context outside of just that place.
I think that's absolutely true. I think especially for the disciplines that already find cases very effective, not to abandon them when they move online. I think that's really important. Some other things that I would think about is, remember, all the tools that we have, our students have, right? So all of your students have access to Zoom. They can fire up a Zoom meeting, and you can require them to talk to somebody. For those of you that are in programs that are very distributed, where there's students all over the place, tell them, get out of your house, drive your car down to the local clinic or the local school or the local, business, and here's a questionnaire. I want you to record an interview with. There are lots of things that we allow students to be lazy in a certain sense, and they come back and tell us our classes aren't applied and our classes aren't real world, and and we're like, well, did you ever think to get, what do you mean, go talk to people? Oh, yeah, well, so we can build that in a curriculum, but I'm just saying, we have those tools. You could make in your discipline, I could sit down right now and come up with 20 people in the areas that I study that would be willing to take a Skype call or a Zoom call with my students. I just write down a list, email them, guys, will you be willing to do a 15 to 30 minute phone call with my students? And they would say, like, sure. And then I could assign all these out to these students and say, you coordinate with Dr. Jones, and he will talk to you about archaeology, when he can.
Has anybody tried, Google was doing that experiment where you talk to somebody across the world and two people stand there in the box and talk to each other?
Oh, really?
Could we do that with students?
I don't see why not.
This might get to the diversity. So my business students go to the Mexico, the technological Monterey school, and they have to spend that half hour talking to another student. What are you learning about this? When you do data analysis, what do you do?
Absolutely. And you could coordinate that. And if you don't know people in Mexico, I guarantee you have peers in the Spanish department who would be happy to find English speakers, abroad that would want to do that.
And that helps both institutions.
Absolutely. There are so many good Doctor Who strategies here that the mind boggles, appropriately for being Doctor Who. We don't take enough advantage of it. And it's not that hard. And I want you to remember what I said. I could sit down and make a list in 15 minutes and send an email and probably very little trouble get this set up. Then I'm going to have the students do the coordination. I'm going to have the students fire up the calls, right? It's not like I've suddenly made my life super duper complicated. For that matter, in some areas, there may be international discussion boards, and I will say, you need to find someone abroad who's studying accounting and run this questionnaire with them. There are ways that we do not have to anymore act like we somehow are the only people on the planet that have these computer devices connected to the internet.
There are two things. The first is that I do encourage my students to do that, and I always tell them to kind of give them a little bit of more moral support to do it, to reach out and say, you can use my name. You can tell them, you're a student in my class, use my name, have them, and that seems to give students a little more of a feeling like they have a way of introducing.
Absolutely,
absolutely. And then the other thing I do is I belong to some professional organizations that have student events or events open to students. And so I announce their events to my students. And a lot of times they'll need me as their kind of sponsoring person, organization effort. And then the students have access to these incredible presentations and networking.
Absolutely. So in 1 minute, we have one more to do, public demonstration of competence. It depends on what your discipline is. I have a background in art and architecture, and public demonstration means public demonstration. Engineers think public demonstration means no one will ever look at what I do ever sometimes. It seems weird because that doesn't how the real world works. Saw David Lyons talk, video. Have people video stuff. Some disciplines do blogs. Have people blog. There are FERPA wrinkles you have to work with, but they're not insurmountable. Have students blog. Public demonstration of competence. Here's a mind blower. Have the student submit their project to a professional in their community or in their network for feedback. Worried that you're not going to get good feedback? Send a rubric with it. Again, the magic word is, hi, I am a student, right? You got to say to them, you should use that magical I'm a student card, because the day you graduate, no one will talk to you ever again, okay? Today they will. Make those connections while they care. Because I just graduated is like, well, nice to talk to you. I got things to do. But public demonstration of competence, remember, public doesn't necessarily mean this. Public means posting, emailing, talking online. Make that a part of what you do. And that's it. Oh, wait, the end.
So,
I'm just really dead set on not going over. And I got 5 seconds.
thank you, Dave.
And I don't have any prizes either. I didn't know we were doing prizes. Have another, by the way, and Crystal's not here. Originally, she was supposed to be giving away CU Online socks. So don't think I'm completely stupid talking about extra socks. You're supposed to have extra socks. I still may be completely stupid, man. You have to come to the CU Online Extra Socks series. Get your extra socks. Oh, and by the way, for those of you that are really interested on this high impact practice key elements, at the bottom there's a little teeny tiny URL, the AACP, AACU, I'm sorry. This is where most of the high impact practice stuff is kind of collected these days. And Jeff Franklin in the provost office is really driving high impact practices for undergraduate education on this campus. So there are resources if you're just interested in the high impact practice stuff, but I'm more interested in just kind of thinking about the concept in terms of online.
Awesome. So I wanted to share this with you guys before you head out.